Fancy wearing a Kuanda suit? Not in Kenya's parliament. A favorite of President William Ruto, the suit was banned along with other traditional African attire for violating parliamentary dress codes. Proper attire, the speaker decreed, is a Western suit and tie. What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. My name's Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, filming this video on December 5th, 2023, out here in Budapest, Hungary. Now, I don't purport to be an expert on all things Kenyan or all things African, but I do have a unique perspective as a black man from America who lived many years of my life in Tunisia, many months of my life in Mauritius, many months of my life in Tanzania, and most recently, as in this year, many months of my life in Kenya. Go check out the second channel I share with my wife, Backpack Bandits, where we are releasing new videos right now of our African adventures. Now, for people who don't know what the Kuanda suit is, this is the Kuanda suit. It's a derivative of the safari jacket that was worn by people who went into the African savannah. It has now been adopted as a new form of formal style by some African people. It was made popular by this man, Kenneth Kuanda, who is known as the father of Zambia. He was the first president of the nation after its independence from British colonial rule. I will put the link to this video in the description. And much like Kenya, which freed itself from British colonial rule only a few decades ago, Zambia has now adopted the Kuanda suit as a certain style worn by certain politicians and famous people, and also by the African streets as well. And I think it's dope. Honestly, it's sleek, it's fly, it's something that I would wear. But unfortunately, too many Africans, from my own two eyes that I've witnessed and experienced and talking to, have a mindset where the white man's ice is colder and we need to be like our former oppressors. And the people who decided to ban the Kuanda suits wear things like this: white powdered wigs worn by British judges and aristocrats in the 1860s, still in 2023. This is not a joke. This is not a game. This is what some people in African upper society think is acceptable to wear. It is not. We need to break the chains of mental slavery. Here is William Ruto, the current president of Kenya, right here, wearing a baby blue, stylish Kuanda suit right next to King Charles III. I appreciate a tan suit, but William Ruto is styling on him. Maybe that's why the parliament decided to ban the Kuanda suit, because you can't have your president outshining the white man like that. I think that's what they're thinking. Anyway, this was written by Abdi Latif Dahir and Elizabeth Payton, published on November 30th, 2023. The Kuanda suit has become a choice attire for African celebrities, elders, and politicians in recent years, including one particularly high-profile convert, Kenya's President William Ruto. A single-breasted safari jacket with short or long sleeves and patch pockets, often worn with matching pants. It was initially made popular in the 1960s by Kenneth Kuanda, the first post-colonial president of Zambia. But the Kuanda suit was banned from the Kenyan parliament this week, along with other forms of traditional African dress and tightly fitted clothing for women. The Kenyan Speaker of Parliament decreed that such attire violates the parliamentary dress code, which largely conforms to a modern Western working wardrobe. I have the video right here of the guy announcing the reasons why he wants to ban the Kuanda coat, and I will talk about that later because that's in the text of the article. But I have to give it up to the Kenyan people. In the comments of this video, it's nothing but people saying that this colonialized mindset has destroyed Africa and we need to break the chains that are still on our minds. So shout out to the Kenyan streets. The African people have Pan-Africanism in their hearts, but the African leaders, unfortunately, do not. Many of them still look at Mzungus as God. Let's continue here. A fashion trend like the Kuanda suit does not accord with the seriousness of the proceedings of the House and its committees, Moses Wetang'ula, the Speaker of the Parliament, said in a speech on Tuesday. Ah, yes, the seriousness of this House cannot be disturbed. Yes, please take me seriously as I try to look like Benjamin Franklin in my black-ass skin. Going to continue here. Proper dress for men entering the parliamentary chambers, he said, is a coat, collar, tie, long sleeve shirts, long trousers, socks and shoes, or service uniform. That's way too much. That's way too much. Let's be honest, man. The Kuanda suit is perfect for Africa. It's breezy, it's light, it's buttoned down, so it's like straight down. It gives that formal aesthetic look. But it's Africa, man. It's hot. It's hot. When I was in Kenya, about 40 degrees on some days. Can't be wearing a suit and tie all the time. And no, no, there's not AC everywhere. So y'all are going to be sweating and musty under those things. The move prompted an outcry on social media, with many asking why proudly African attire would be outlawed in an African government building in favor of the suits and ties associated with colonial powers. So here is the Kuanda suit worn by Kenneth Kuanda. He was the president of Zambia for 30 years. Some people refer to the Kuanda suit as the dictator suit because unfortunately a lot of African leaders post independence decided to stay in power way too long. But I think the idea is that these people are still freedom fighters and they still deserve some respect. Robert Mugabe did a lot of bad things. He was the president of Zimbabwe for a long time and became a dictator. But overall, we still have to appreciate the sacrifice so many of these brave black men did to fight these colonial powers, showing that there is some hope for the African mind, that they do not worship the white man and see all of his ways as good. So, yeah, in the past, African leaders had nuts and courage, but they were bad practitioners of democracy. But that can change. So we need to change our mindset, but we also need to embrace our blackness. Let's continue. Truly, colonialism is still deeply embedded in our minds. Abdullahi Halake, a Kenyan human rights activist, said in a post in Swahili on X, formerly Twitter. He included a link to a story with a photo of the parliament speaker wearing the white wig and robe that is a holdover from British colonial days. Continuing here, the flap comes as Afrocentric fashion is gaining huge traction on the continent and further afield, on runways and movie screens, and by shoppers drawn to black culture and style. The Kenyan speaker also banned hats and caps in parliament and said that women should wear business, formal, or smart casual clothing with skirts and dresses below the knee. Sleeveless blouses were prohibited, he added. The rules apply to guests and journalists visiting parliament as well as politicians. So I don't like this respectability politics game, especially when respectability is associated with whiteness or with Europeanness. The proximity to whiteness or chasing white validation or white standards of beauty or dress is destroying the African mind. One of the biggest fights and arguments I ever had with my very close friend Josh, the black man that I interviewed in the video about a black man living in rural Serbia, was that he told me that we need to dress respectable and we need to dress in ways that make people respect us. But we have to realize that even if we wear suits and ties all day, like I did in hot ass Tunisia for a year of my life, even if we decide to speak the Queen's English, even if we decide to be perfect paragons of human beings, we as black people, by the white supremacists and larger societies outside of us, are not viewed as people no matter what we do. So chasing their aesthetic, trying to be like them, will never make them see us as men or as women. We need to embrace our blackness and not care about the consequences of what other people think about how we wear our clothes, because how we wear our skin is already our sin. Let's continue here. I gave these directions conscious of the fact that they might bring discomfort to some of you, said Mr. Wetangalu, 67. However, discomfort is necessary for the convenience and security of members and good order. One of the most prominent targets of the edict did not appear to be listening. A day after the announcement in Parliament, President Ruto, who publicly wore his first Kuanda suit as president in June this year, met the NBA Africa chief executive while wearing a brown Kuanda suit. On Thursday, he attended a government function while wearing a version in sky blue. He has grabbed attention when sporting a Kuanda suit in pink. Okay, Ruto. Ruto out here stepping out. Ruto out here styling on him, showing up like Cameron in 2001 in a pink Kuanda suit. Yeah, with the cell phone to his ear. That's dope. I appreciate good fashion. I think, everybody has the right to wear what they want to wear. I do think, if you are an elected official, if you're going out abroad to different countries, you should be be dressing your best because you are representing your country on the world stage. You get what I'm saying? But you could do like how the Arabs do. The Arabs show up and wear thobes everywhere. They're at the White House with the keffiyehs and the thobes and everything. Sometimes even holding the sword. They don't care. The Arabs don't care. The Asian politicians sometimes, like the ones in Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and that sort of stuff, they go places wearing the sarong and stuff like that. There's no reason that an African leader can't show up wearing their clothes. And that has happened before. I believe Ronald Reagan had some of the African leaders showing up and they were wearing their traditional garb. And that's dope. We should be doing that. Gaddafi did that. Gaddafi showed up everywhere wearing his traditional clothes from Libya. We can do the same as black people. And we should not be ashamed of our traditional dress, wherever we come from. Many modern African leaders have shown awareness that voters appreciate politicians willing to openly embrace their cultural heritage and traditional attire. Nelson Mandela, as president of South Africa, wore his signature Madiba shirts in bold prints, while the former Nigerian president, Goodluck Jonathan, often wore a wide brimmed fedora style hat beloved by tribal chiefs in his region. Here is Nelson Mandela styling on him. Oh, this is our father. We love Nelson Mandela so much. He is a hero. One of the best things my mother ever did was she punished me, not by whooping me one time, but she wouldn't let me have my cell phone or a computer or go outside or play until I read Nelson Mandela's book, his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. Very good book, and it's thick as hell. It's like literally this big. But I read it in 1 week. I was captivated by his story. I'm very inspired by Nelson Mandela. He is one of my true heroes. Really love that guy. So, in Rwanda, President Paul Kagame wears clothing made by Rwandan designers to popularize the Made in Rwanda campaign. Mr. Kuanda of Zambia, who led his southern African nation from 1964 to 1991, adopted the short sleeved suit as a symbol of African freedom and independence. The style had early roots in Australia and strong similarities to a Chinese silhouette made popular by Chairman Mao. In banning the Kuanda suit, Mr. Wetang'ala, the Kenyan parliamentary speaker, called them Mao Zedong coats. That's true, and you will find that in this video that you can listen to his entire speech on why he banned it. And so possibly, the Kawande suit might be associated with socialism, communism, things that still make the hearts quiver of people who are in the bourgeoisie, who are really wanting to maintain the status quo. But let's keep it real. It's an African style. Nobody's thinking about Chairman Mao, and nobody's thinking about Australia, in Kenya, or Zimbabwe, or anywhere where people are wearing the Kawanda suit. They're thinking that this is a style that's fitting for the setting that they live in, and it's tributes to the African heritage that they have. So let's just continue here. The speaker is a former senator who served as former affairs minister a decade ago until he resigned following corruption allegations. He has been an ally of Mr. Ruto, 56, a former vice president who rose to fame as a shrewd political operator and businessman. He assumed office in September last year after winning a tight election. So I wasn't in Kenya when Ruto was elected, but it was good to see that African democracy can work. There can be a peaceful transition of power. I believe Ruto was the opposition candidate and he won. And instead of the loser contesting the votes or threatening civil war, Ruto assumed office, and that was great to see. We don't need coups in Africa. We need leaders who are willing to step down. Let's continue here. The kerfuffle over the dress code in Parliament comes amid rising public anger and protest over his administration's performance, especially over the spiking cost of food and fuel and increasing taxes. So Ruto is probably dealing with a lot because Kenya, like most African nations, are still developing, but Kenya has a good head start, and I truly believe Kenya could be if not a superpower in the world, at least a dominant regional force in Africa. So I think there is a lot of opportunity in Kenya, but there is still a lot of poverty like you've never seen in Kenya. It's crazy. And I find it odd that the speaker, this guy who banned it, is a friend of Ruto. Why are you hating on Ruto and how he wears his clothes? Do you think Ruto's gonna take your hose, man? Do you think Ruto's gonna style on your wife and take her back for the night? Like what's wrong with you, man? There's no reason to do this. There's no reason to go out of the way when you have so many serious problems in Kenya. Food shortages, fuel shortages, taxes are getting high. Kenya was cheap, but it was still, expensive going to the grocery store, even for me with my, rich American ass. No, I'm not rich at all. I'm a poor English teacher. You guys know that. Let's continue here. Mr. Rudo's tailor, Ashok Sunny, said the president's penchant for Kuanda suits came from a desire to promote local manufacturing and designers. He is showing that we don't have to wear suits all day. We can wear the African cuts representing the African look, Mr. Sunny said in an interview this year with TV 47 in Kenya. He added, they call it the dictator look most of the time because most of the old dictators used to like the Kuanda suit. Unfortunately. But just because somebody wears a beret, that doesn't mean that they're, a communist revolutionary. Just because, somebody wears an army jacket doesn't mean that they're the strong arm of American imperialism. It's just fashion. It's just clothes. It doesn't have any other meaning. You get what I'm saying? Going to continue. It is not the first time that sartorial choices have roiled Kenya's parliament. Mike Sonko, a former senator and Nairobi governor, was ejected from parliament in 2011 for wearing sunglasses and ear studs. Mr. Sonko, a flamboyant politician known for his lavish lifestyle, decried the move at the time, saying he was dressing like the country's youth. And this is another thing, man. I think, this disconnect between the African streets and the African leaders is a very, very big problem. As we all know, Africa is the youngest continent on earth right now. And, the population boom in Africa is happening while we speak. They say by the end of the century, Africa could have around 2 billion people, if not more, or something like that. Hopefully, inshallah. Like, hopefully, people don't have a civil war or some mass extinction event, something like that. We want Africa to prosper, and we want every black life in Africa to be able to flourish and thrive. But unfortunately, the leaders of Africa are still old and they are stuck in tradition. And I really hate this mindset in Africa that says that the elders know more. Yes, there is wisdom that we can gain from our ancestors or from the people who have been around longer than us. But just following the words of people who have just been on this planet longer and they have old ideas and old ways of thinking is not good. We have to break those chains. We have to break those bonds because a lot of these old guys, they were around during the colonial time. Maybe they have fond memories of colonial time. Unfortunately, in Africa, you have people nowadays saying that apartheid was better or the colonial time was better and everything was safer and cleaner and nicer and all that sort of stuff, which is absolutely not true because black people were living in squalor while all the whites and all the other foreigners in Africa were living luxurious lives. We need to change that. We need to change the way, and Africa needs to open up for its youth. The youth of Africa need to take control of the continent. But let's get to this last article for today because I've been showing these goofballs wearing these hideous, scratchy, uncomfortable looking wigs on their head. So you might be wondering, why are the Kenyan politicians still wearing this? Why African judges still wearing wigs is a glaring symbol of British colonialism. Opponents of the colonial outfit aren't just arguing against inconvenience, but against a tradition that African judiciaries appear to be embracing. This was written for The Independent by Kevin CF. So here's a picture here. Zimbabwean judges in long red robes and horsehair wigs, a throwback to an era of British colonial rule. I wish they knew even white people look at them and say, this is ridiculous. Even white folks don't even do this no more. Holding on to this tradition out of everything is so bad. It's a bad look on us as black people. We need to have pride in ourselves and we need to stop trying to chase white aesthetics. Period. So the British gave up their last colonies in Africa half a century ago, but they left their wigs behind. Not just any wigs, they are the long white horsehair locks worn by high court judges and King George III. They are so old fashioned and so uncomfortable that even British barristers have stopped wearing them. But in former British colonies, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Malawi, and others, they live on, worn by judges and lawyers. Now, a new generation of African jurists is asking, why are the continent's most prominent legal minds still wearing the trappings of the colonizers? It's not just a question of aesthetics. The wigs and robes are perhaps the most glaring symbol of colonial inheritance at a time when that history is being dredged up in all sorts of ways. This year, Tanzanian President John Magufuli is no longer the president of Tanzania. They have a woman president now. But either way, described a proposed free trade agreement with Europe as a form of colonialism. In Zimbabwe, President Robert Mugabe still refers to the British as thieving colonialists. This article was written back in 2017, so Mugabe is dead, and I believe Magufuli is dead. But these were their words. And this is another thing that I'm talking about. Yes, colonialism still exists, neo-colonialism still exists, but these African leaders still, I believe, have a lot of admiration and affection for the former colonial masters. So you guys, Mugabe, Magufuli, you're complaining about the free trade agreements between these European powers. Then why'd you make them? Why'd you allow them to be there? You get what I'm saying? The only thing black people control in this world are our countries. That's it. That's it. And even those things are still under neocolonial jurisdiction to some degree. We need to break those chains finally, finally, because we don't control anything else in this world except a few countries in Africa. And we need to take better control of that. These are our assets, and we need to value them. And we also need to value our health and our safety mentally and how we view ourselves. Because looking in the mirror and seeing this as being respectable is absolutely not cool. It's destroying us inside. And I don't care how rich Kenya will be, how rich Tanzania will be, how wealthy Africa will be in the future. We will never be a free people, even if we have billions and billions of dollars in our pockets, as long as we have white supremacist thinking in our minds. In June, the premier of Cape Town was suspended from her party after writing on Twitter that modern healthcare was a colonial contribution. The relics of colonialism are scattered across the continent. There are the Queen's namesakes, Victoria Falls, north of Zimbabwe, Lake Victoria, east of Uganda, Victoria Island in Nigeria. There is the left lane driving, the cricket, the way public education is organized or not organized. Yeah, one thing that needs to change is all of those places needs to have their African names reintroduced, or they need to be created. Yeah, calling it Lake Victoria, something I didn't even think about until now, needs to be changed. So most cities and streets have received new names since the Europeans left. In 2013, Mugabe officially rebaptized Victoria Falls Mosi Oatunya, or the smoke that thunders, in the Kololo language. All right, that's dope. See, that's good. That's good. Yet the wig survives, along with other relics of colonial courtroom, red robes, white bows, references to judges as my lord and my lady. In nearly every former British colony, op-eds have been written and speeches made about why the wig ought to be removed. In Uganda, the New Vision newspaper conducted an investigation into the cost of the wigs, reporting that each one cost $6,500. That's ridiculous. In a country in countries like Uganda, Kenya, Zimbabwe, where $6,500 is double the amount that people make in a year, one wig should not be $6,500. The state should not be spending money on that at all. Period. Period. At all. At all. If they really want to wear the wig, they got to buy it. They have to pay for it. In Ghana, a prominent lawyer, Augustine Niebuhr, argued that removing wigs will reduce the intimidation and fear that often characterize our courtrooms. That's sad. That's sad that you use the white man's hair and aesthetics and appearance to terrify other black people. That's blatant white supremacy. You're trying to use that to put fear in the minds of our people, letting them think that when they see blonde hair that they should be afraid and that they should bow down. That's absolutely horrible. One of the editors of the Nigerian Lawyer blog wrote that wigs weren't made for the sweltering Lagos heat, where lawyers melted under their garb. The culture that invented the wig and gown is different from our own, and the weather is different. Unini Chioma wrote. Increasingly, though, opponents of the colonial outfit aren't just arguing against inconvenience, but against a tradition that African judiciaries appear to be embracing. Britain's colonial courts, which preceded independence, were sometimes brutal. In response to Kenya's Mau Mau rebellion in the 1950s, for example, the wigged white judges sentenced more than 1,000 people to death for conspiring against colonial rule. Absolutely. Wearing this on your head, knowing the history behind it, that white men came to Kenya and sentenced Kenyans to death while wearing these white wigs for fighting for their own land, should make you want to burn that wig. It's a shame. It's a shame. And too many Africans think this way. Too many Africans think that what the white man does or did is okay and it's justified. And we need to be like them. We don't need to be like them. We need to be ourselves and free. The colonial system and law as an instrument of repression, and we're still maintaining this tradition without questioning it, said Arnold Sunga, director of the Africa program at the International Commission of Jurists. It's a disgrace to the modern courts of Africa. In Kenya, former Chief Justice Willie Matunga appealed to remove the Whigs from the courtroom, arguing that they were a foreign imposition. Is this the same Willie Matunga that banned the Kuanda? Let me look back here. That's interesting. So the same guy in Kenya who wants to ban the Kuanda, I think also as well wants to got rid of the white wigs. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I'm going to look back here because I just now saw this. That's a very interesting coincidence. Very interesting coincidence. Moses Wetangula. Okay. So it was Moses Wetangula, not Willie Watunga. Okay, interesting. So in Kenya, former Chief Justice Willie Matunga appealed to remove the Whigs from the courtroom, arguing that they were a former foreign imposition, not a Kenyan tradition. He swapped the traditional British red robes for Kenyanized green and yellow ones. He called the Whigs dreadful. But that outlook wasn't shared by many Kenyan judges and lawyers who saw the Whigs and robes as their own uniforms, items that elevate a courtroom despite or because of their colonial links. Unfortunately, this mindset exists in Africa. It was met with consternation from within the bench and the bar, said Isaac Okero, president of the Law Society of Kenya. Okero is a defender of the wig and the robe and argues that they represent more than a British tradition, but something that distinguishes the country's judges. I don't feel at all that it has any negative connotation of colonialism. It has risen beyond that. It is a tradition of the Kenyan bar. This year, Kenya's new Chief Justice, David Maraga, has indicated that he wants to revert to the colonial traditions. During his swearing in ceremony, he wore a long white wig and the British style red robe. Many Kenyans were perplexed. It was his rather peculiar outfit that would send a resounding message to Kenyans, said a broadcaster on KTN, one of the country's most popular news channels. It's back to the old days. In Zimbabwe, still ruled by vehement anti colonialist Robert Mugabe, the Whigs are perhaps most mystifying. Why would a man who stripped white farmers of their land, who railed against the name of Victoria Falls, allow an archaic judicial tradition to remain in place? See, that's the thing, man. Robert Mugabe had a lot of smoke for just talking about the white folks, but sort of let certain things slide by. And that's why we have to be militant. We have to be very militant on being against these things related to white supremacy. I know a lot of people are going to jump into the comments and say, Simon, you are married to a white woman. You are a coon. You are a coon, nigga. You are married to a white woman. And I'm still talking my same pro-black shit. I can talk whatever I want. And if you're concerned about where I put my black penis, how about you put it in your mouth? Continuing here. Some analysts say that the policy reveals something about Mugabe, the closet Anglophile, a fan of Dickens who once said cricket civilizes people and creates good gentlemen. But Sunga argues that the rationale is more insidious. We are seeing post-independence African states trying to maintain these symbols of power and authority in the belief that it will help enrich themselves, he said. The curly horsehair wigs have been used in court since the 1600s, during the reign of Charles II, when they became a symbol of the British judicial system. Some historians say they were initially popularized by France's King Louis XIV, who was trying to conceal his balding head. By the 18th century, they were meant to distinguish judges and lawyers and other members of the upper crust. Enter the word bigwig into the lexicon. Other countries in the British Commonwealth, such as Australia and Canada, also inherited the wigs and robes, but have moved toward removing them from courtrooms. An Australian Chief Justice last year demanded that barristers remove their wigs before addressing her. The abolition of wigs is all part of the progression towards a modern way, said the Chief Justice Marilyn Warren. This year in Britain, the House of Commons lifted the requirement that clerks who are experts in parliamentary law wear wigs. John Bercow, the Speaker, said the change would promote a marginally less stuffy and forbidding image of this chamber. But aside from the wigs, African courts, sorry, Hold on, wait. But aside from the Whigs, African courts have adapted to a post colonial context. New constitutions have been written. A new generation of judges has emerged. Even though some judiciaries bent to political pressure, new legal systems are rooted in British common law but shaped by the traditions and cultures of their own countries. In Kenya this month, the Supreme Court annulled the recent presidential election, a bold display of judicial independence that infuriated the sitting president. In the Nairobi courtroom where the ruling was delivered, several lawyers wore their powdered wigs. Behind the bench, a row of men and women in red robes presided. Maraga sat down before speaking, the sleeves of his black robe hanging over the bench. The greatness of a nation lies in its fidelity to its constitution, he said, and a strict adherence to the rule of law. And that's the end of that. So, yeah, once again, the rule of law might be important, but what's also important is fostering an identity in a nation and getting rid of white supremacy and black people wearing patently false white, blonde, haired wigs on their head is a shame. We should be embracing things like the Kuanda suit and other African styles. We should not be trying to be like our oppressors. And even though I am not an African, I am a black person of African descent, I still think it's important for our people in the diaspora to reach back to the people on the continent and inform them about white supremacy because a lot of them have those nascent beliefs in them. When I was in Africa, I heard a lot of welcome to Africa and Africa is for Africans and all that sort of stuff, but a lot of them still see the white man's ice is colder and the grass is greener in Europe and that sort of thing. And we need to educate our brothers and sisters as to why that's wrong. And that's what I do on this channel. I know a lot of Kenyans don't like me because of the review that I did of being black in Kenya a few months ago. But hey, I don't care who doesn't like me. I only care about speaking the truth. I'm the rawest, realest, blackest YouTuber out here, and I'm always going to share my mind. I don't have no big donors. I'm supported by the people like you, the person who's watching this video all the way to the end. Free the Kuanda suit. William Ruto, continue to step out and style on them in the Kuanda suit. Shout out to all my African brothers and sisters. My name's Simon Hill. Stay tuned. Peace.